I am the Regional Director for the Africa Program at the International Commission of Jurists. The event that we are having this morning is a dialogue with Swazi Women Human Rights Defenders, with members of the CEDAW Committee. We're very, very pleased that so many members of the CEDAW Committee are able to join us today. And we hope to have a few more committee members join us. And we hope also that a few more women human rights defenders from Eswatini will log on as well. So to start off with, we have had an advanced dialogue last week where it was a closed dialogue with the women human rights defenders who did some advanced preparation for their discussion and dialogue with the CEDAW committee members. They've prepared a background document which has been shared, and the background document will form the basis for the engagement this morning. I'm sure you have all seen the preparatory documents. I won't run through that again. So just to underscore that this dialogue is meant to create a platform for women human rights defenders in Eswatini to highlight the main challenges which they face in Eswatini. And this is also in preparation for them to submit a report to the CEDAW committee. But there have been several delays with this process, and I'm sure that we will talk about all of that during the course of this morning's event. We were supposed to have introductory opening remarks from the EU ambassador in Eswatini. She's unfortunately not able to join us. So with that, we will go directly into the screening of the CEDAW animation. And Tanvir, I assume that you're going to run this. So I'm going to hand over to you to run that animation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kajal. Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, esteemed guests. And I will be showing the animation that we have prepared, which is about the CEDAW Convention. And essentially what we've been trying to do with animation is just making international law more accessible to people. And you will see in this animation, it's quite a short one, but it briefly describes what the CEDAW does and how the amount of states who've ratified it and so on. But I think I will let the animation speak for itself, and I will show it to you just now.
CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, is a core international human rights instrument. It was adopted by the United Nations in 1979. As of July 2020, 189 states have ratified the CEDAW, making it one of the most ratified human rights treaties. By becoming a state party to the CEDAW, a state commits itself to take all appropriate measures, including introducing legislation and temporary special measures, women can enjoy all their human rights. The CEDAW has three foundational principles: substantive equality, non-discrimination, and obligation. Let's start with the first one, substantive equality. In many countries, women continue to live in a society where men wield the primary power and occupy roles of political leadership, moral authority, and social privilege. Women occupy a considerably disadvantageous position in comparison to men. Substantive equality recognizes these unequal positions and seeks to address them by ensuring equality of results. For example, making primary education for all children may not on its own result in gender equal results in a society where education for girls is discouraged or considered unimportant. States should implement additional measures, incentives for families to send their daughters to school, and making sure that girls can safely and easily attend schools. These measures should also include eliminating societal beliefs that underpin obstacles to girls' access to education. States are obligated under the CEDAW to develop a corrective approach by looking at how and why men and women are treated differently, implement measures to address this. Now let's move on to non-discrimination. Gender-based discrimination can be both direct and indirect. Laws and policies that directly discriminate against women in relation to marriage, citizenship, property ownership, inheritance, and work exist in many countries. Indirect discrimination occurs when laws and policies that appear to be applicable to both men and women turn out to be discriminatory because of culture, tradition, religious practices, and/or other measures that claim to protect women, but actually end up being an obstacle to women. There is indirect discrimination if a policy at work, in order to be promoted as manager, one has to take on night shift. This policy directly discriminates against women. More often than not, responsibilities as primary caregivers of children the standard working hours. The state is obliged to identify, prohibit, and redress, and prevent all forms of discrimination against women both on paper and in practice. Finally, let's address segregation. We are required to take positive measures to accelerate gender equality through the promotion of women's rights. The CEDAW calls for the implementation of temporary special measures which would give provisional advantages to women while the environment is being corrected. States may, for instance, set special quotas for women in decision-making positions such as the legislature, judiciary, and executive branches of the government. State parties to the CEDAW must undertake all necessary measures to protect women's rights, create a world that is equal for all.
Thank you. Thank you for that animation, which gives us an overview of CEDAW and its operation. Before we start off this morning, just to let you know that which of the CEDAW committee members are in attendance this morning. We have Ms. Nala Haider from Lebanon, Justice Aruna Narain from Mauritius, and Ms. Louisa Chalal from Algeria. We also expect Ms. Hilary Gebberdema from Ghana to join us during the course of the morning. We are delighted to have all of the CEDAW committee members joining us today. And with that, we will start off the presentation by the Swazi Women Human Rights Defenders. Mary Page de Silva will give us some background on the process and on the ICJ Access to Justice report. Mary, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Kajal. Good morning, everyone, and a very good morning to members of the committee. Good morning to our partners from the ICJ, and good morning to everyone that is joining from different parts of the world. The civil society in Swaziland, particularly women's rights organizations and women human rights defenders, prepared a report for the CEDAW Committee in anticipation of the state's report, which was supposed to be filed, but for some reason has not been filed as yet. And in the report, we set out the legislative framework in terms of women's rights, which is the constitution of the country, of course borrowing from international instruments on issues of equality and non-discrimination. And we speak about this Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act, which took quite a number of years, over a decade, to pass into law, but which was eventually enacted in 2018, which seeks to protect and promote women and girls particularly, but generally any person from sexual violence and any other domestic offences. Within the report, of course, there's the summary of the issues that are facing women human rights defenders, not only, but also the organizations that work on these issues, and also the women on the ground. But those issues will be highlighted by the other members that are with me here today. And specifically to also then, mine is also just to say that this process involved over 25 civil society organizations that came together and compiled the report, looking at all the issues, civil and political rights, looking at health issues, looking at education, and anything that you could think, environmental issues as well. And last week, we came together to have a consultative meeting in preparation of this one to say that the report is quite lengthy. I think it's more than 30 pages. And how do we zero in on the most important issues that we wish to bring before the committee? And that meeting as well had more than, I think we had about almost 20 women human rights defenders representing the different organizations that were part of the process, and also including new organizations now that were specific on issues of, perhaps issues of women with disabilities and issues of health in terms of cancer and diabetes, which were not part of the process at the very beginning. So coming from that meeting, we did prepare the document that has been sent through to the committee, and then to also zero in on the issue that women human rights defenders face, which was not brought out very clearly in the report, because at that time, it was not as much of a topical issue as it is now. The fact that even the organizations and the personnel that work in the organizations and women human rights defenders generally on the ground are facing threats and risks in terms of the work that they are doing, and the closing off of civic space is affecting everybody. And then the issue of COVID-19 that has also restricted a very closed off space in the country. So we will have a bit of an update to the report that we had prepared last year in terms of bringing it in, with regard to COVID-19 and how it is affecting everyone. And to say that women human rights defenders are coming together as well, basically I think for the first time to also speak about issues that affect them personally as women human rights defenders, and to say how they can assist each other and collaborate with each other, and how to use the platforms that we have as like the committee itself to say, how do we flag out issues that women human rights defenders are facing? Mine is a very simple one. I do not have a presentation, so to speak, to do. It is also then to introduce the members of the panel that are with me here. We have women from the health sector, we have women from the workers sector, we have women working with young women, and we have women working on broader women rights issues. So they will introduce themselves, of course, to say from which organizations they come in, but it's important to emphasize that despite the organizations that are present in the room now, this is a process that involves close to 40 civil society organizations, taking into account that the ones that compiled the report and the ones that were part of the consultative process last week. I will hand over to you, Kaja.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for that. We have several women human rights defenders who will present this morning. We will start off with Zanele Tabede-Vilakati, who will present on discrimination, gender mainstreaming, equality before the law and legal capacity, older women, women with disabilities, and widows. Zanele, please, can you proceed? Is Zanele with us this morning?
I think they might be experiencing some technical glitches, but let me just follow up.
Okay.
Sorry, we were having some technical difficulties, but I think we are set to go. We did not hear how far we are with the program. Am I supposed to go on? Sorry, Kaja.
Yes. If Zanele can do her presentation, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Zanele Tabede Vilagati. I am the founder of an initiative called Women Working Together, and I am the National Director for Women in Law in Eswatini currently. And I will be presenting on discrimination, gender mainstreaming, older women, women with disabilities and widows, and equality before the law and legal capacity. So as Mary had mentioned earlier that we met as a group working with women's issues in Eswatini, civil society organizations as well as individual activists. And we feel that though the constitution of the country makes provision against discrimination, it remains a main trend that women, sexual and gender minorities, and other minority groups are discriminated against with regards to access to land, property rights, assets, financial services, decision-making positions, and other topical issues. There is a need for law reform, beginning with the amendment of Section 20 of the Constitution to include discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Civic education would need to be done before any law reform takes place, for people to know the law and to have some sort of a consultative process and be included in the making of the law and all of these reforms. And these should involve different stakeholders rather than a few local authorities and institutions that the state consults. The laws on the definition of mental illness should be amended because the definition being used is highly discriminatory against, and it should include the LGBTI community. The issue of gender identity should be addressed, in particular that of gender markers. We have seen that transgender persons are having a difficult time with changing their gender markers in their identity documentation. We have seen also that in Eswatini, the Gender and Family Issues Department under the Deputy Prime Minister's Office carries the burden of ensuring gender mainstreaming within government. We would like that all ministries have some officer that is designated to each of their ministries to ensure gender mainstreaming in all ministries in the country. The Gender, Family and Issues unit carries much of a burden, but does not have any human capital. And also, we have seen that we have no data. We have on women, widows, and people with disabilities for the appropriate budgeting and accountability of funds that are disbursed. For instance, during COVID-19, the funds were donated and made available for financial aid, but there was no clear criteria in how the beneficiaries were going to benefit from these funds, nor has there been an accountability strategy in place on how these funds were used. There also is no data on women in the informal sector who desperately need financial aid in this COVID time. So cultural practices continue to discriminate against women, and in particular, widows cannot be elected into parliament. There is a rising trend of widows being dispossessed of their land and driven out of their marital homes and land. Tenure system adds to the vulnerabilities of women with regards to land. The land policy needs to be enacted, and in order to bring certainty on ownership and usage of land and curb this problem. Also, we found an issue with the elderly grants that are provided in the country currently. These are insufficient for people to live by. And also, we mentioned that the disability grants are also insufficient for people to succeed on. I think that all of the issues that we have mentioned are dealing with discrimination and gender mainstreaming and women with disabilities, basically all encompass discrimination. We saw that the laws of the country need to be in line with the Constitution, and there has to be a very, very clear consultative process that involves everyone, not just the traditional structures and a few people here and there, but all regions and all people in the country, taking into consideration civil society groups and also informal sector women and all other groups need to be consulted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zanele. Thank you very much. Next, we will have Phumelele Dlamini Zulu. Phumelele will speak to us about child marriages, violence against women, trafficking of women, and sex workers' rights. Phumelele, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Phumelele Dlamini. I'm the coordinator for the Domestic Workers Union in Swaziland and also community facilitator and paralegal for women in law. Child marriage continues to be a problem and is driven by the level of education, poverty, and the dual system, with customary marriages permissible when a girl reaches the age of 18. The marriage bill has to be finalized urgently because it provides the age of marriage, which is contradictory to that in the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act. And there is also a contradiction in the Child Protection Act on the ages. There's also lack of up-to-date reporting on the violence against women in the national surveillance system, as the last report was done in 2017. The one-stop center for victims of sexual and gender-based violence have been established in different towns, but people need to be educated on their existence as they have to be decentralized to all other towns for ease of access. COVID-19 has contributed to an increase in cases because victims were restricted to their homes and under the control of their abuser. There were no responses mechanism put in place to assist victims in accessing services. There is also lack of safe houses for victims in the country, and this exposes them to more abuses. Police also lack education on their duty towards victims of sexual and gender-based violence. And the dual system continues to create challenges in the law with regard to status of women and girls and how they are treated in terms of access to justice. Trafficking of women and girls is not being prioritized as the programs that have been initiated have died down. They've been talking about it, but it just went down. Many women and girls continue not only to be trafficked to foreign countries, but also locally for forced labor. For example, the domestic workers. Instead of conducting civic education and advocating for behavior change to eradicate gender-based violence, people including legislators and other duties bearers are calling for the amendment of the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence, which is opposite of what is needed. The challenge faced by sex workers include the criminalization of sexual identities, social stigma and discrimination, limited healthcare services for key populations, and lack of access to clinical competent and appropriate healthcare. They are identified as key populations when dealing with access to healthcare, but their other rights are not protected or promoted, and they are not assisted when these are violated. And this Thank you. I think I can end here what I have just.
Thank you, Phumelele. Next, we have Zenanima Zibogo, who's going to present on education, corporal punishment, employment, and rural women. Zenani, over to you. Zenani, we're not hearing you. You might need to unmute your mic.
Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm audible enough.
We hear you well.
All right, thank you. My name is Zenanima Zibogo, and I work with Women in Law. As stated, I'll be presenting on education, corporal punishment, employment, and rural women. Well, the rate of school dropouts due to pregnancy is alarming, and it has increased during the COVID-19 pandemic duration. And this is exacerbated by it exacerbates poverty and gender-based violence. Though there is government policy that pregnant girls should continue with their education, should attend classes, and carry on with school, there is no conformity to this law. And school authorities and parents continue to force girls to leave school once they fall pregnant. The curriculum on sexual reproductive health rights is not comprehensive enough to address problems of early pregnancy, stigma, and dropouts. Teachers continue to engage in sexual relationships with students with little consequences. Some cases make it to court and some end within the school. Some children have been denied the right to education due to issues of discipline, where school authorities expel students and give them the bad recommendation when referral to another school. And the referral is very important because the principal for, if a child has to leave one school to the next, the principal of that particular school will require the recommendation. And if the recommendation is negative, that child will be denied the right to school, to education. There is need for regulation of free primary education and orphaned and vulnerable children fees, which are compromising the quality of education because schools are unable to function properly with the major amount of that the state provides. And this is during the examination results, such is seen as the private schools are seen to perform very, very well, and the government schools continue to perform poorly. In addition, the feeding scheme in schools is under budgeted and not regulated properly. This results in shortage of food, which is critical and for many students who come from improvised homes. When this project was introduced, parents and children were told that they'd receive free food, all meals at school. And this program is seen to fail because it's poorly regulated. Despite that, there is policy against corporal punishment in schools. It is still being practiced, and there are no measures for enforceability and compliance to hold teachers accountable. We think that it's not enough for the ministry to state that the laws which prohibits corporal punishment, and then there are no enforceability and accountable measures. We have observed that children complain about teachers who still use corporal punishment, but we have not seen steps being taken against those teachers. Under the COVID-19, the vulnerability of informal sector has been exposed, and due to the lack of protective legal framework, which many informal sector and in casual employment losing their jobs without compensation or benefits and adding to the already high unemployment rate. During the period of March, April, many informal sectors, especially domestic workers, were relieved of their duties by their employers without compensation, without even being given notice. And because the employers stated that they fear for the health of their children or of their families, and also their employers were being laid off work because one of the impacts of COVID-19 is that most people lost their jobs. Sexual exploitation of women in the textile and low-income jobs continues to be high, with women not reporting for fear of losing their jobs because of lack of employment opportunities and of economy that is in crisis. These women work in vulnerable sectors, and they do not have enough legal frameworks that protect them, especially when it comes to their welfare, health conditions. The number of hours that they work is not equal to the compensation that they receive. And they fear to report such because they know that once a case has especially when a case has been opened, the industrial law and the process just is lengthy, and it requires a financial muscle which they do not have. So they would opt not to pursue legal actions. Most rural women work in vulnerable informal sector, and they were requested to produce masks to address the shortfall in the ones provided by government. I think it's important to note that these women were the women in the informal sector were the ones, they were in the first group of people that the government required that they stay home. You know, they were classified as non-essential service providers. However, when the government realized that, you know, we need more masks, then they required them, you know what, they should come back and provide those services. Many of these women earn a living from communal and land which cannot be used as surety or security for financial services, and they still need for a legislative framework that will assist us. It's not just unique with Eswatini, but banks require a title deed, for instance, as a form of security. And these women do not have this title deed because they operate their businesses in Swazi nation land. And we know that Swazi nation land does not provide the holder of the rights of the land with any documentation. And this disadvantages the women because in order to progress in life, they have no security. For me, I think I will end there, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Zenani. We will have our final presentation from Dumisile Mavuso, who will present on health, maternal mortality, abortions, and persons with albinism. Dumisile, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good day, everybody. I'm Dumisile Mavuso, the founding director for Diabetes Eswatini, and also the network, NCD network. I'm a deputy under Kango with 14 organizations, and also I'm a chairperson at IDF SADC. I will be presenting on the health issues. COVID-19 occurred during the period where the healthcare systems in our country is in crisis. With a shortage of basic drugs, understaffing, overstretching of the legal resources available. We are talking about 15% of the budget of the national budget that is allocated to to the health issues, yet there is a lot of demands around that. The national budget is too much and not properly illustrated for the period areas, with corruption being raised in all government ministries and the department as a whole. There is a need for increase of the budget to provide equal health care rather than merely providing inadequate services, rendering the people more impoverished because they have to purchase their own medication from pharmaceuticals. It tends to be expensive in private clinics and hospitals for equal health care. Those with no financial power, they are left to die of illnesses that could be treated or cured if the proper systems were in place. The linkage between COVID-19 and the chronic illnesses such as diabetes and cancer has not been identified and therefore not prioritized. Testing for COVID-19 has been privatized, with many citizens being unable to afford the exorbitant fees charged by the private laboratory. There is a need for information dissemination and decentralization of services and preventing measures and education programs that will put in place rather than focusing on treatment. The state seems to focus on closing the gates after the horses have bloated, and this proves costly and tens of lives lost and financial resources wasted. There is a general lack of equipment on chronic illnesses, and it is recommended that the funds used to treat citizens under the Pilani Fund, which is the public fund for specialized healthcare provided to foreign countries, should be divided to procure special equipment and special professionals and services to all clinics and hospitals. The minority status of women prevents them from taking decisions on sexual reproductive health, resulting on the maternal mortality and other childbirth complications that could be avoided. There is only one pharmaceutical psychologist hospital in the country, and it is understaffed, and psychosocial staff should be available in all health sectors. Budgeting should be done appropriately to also ensure that staff is adequately remunerated to prevent them from taking second jobs to survive. There is also lack of data of people living with disabilities to analyze those born with disabilities and those whose health complicated and have stepped into the disabilities. Likewise, members of LGBTI community need to be protected from stigma and discrimination, and enable them to access healthcare services without any problem. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dumisile. And with that, we have the 4 presentations from the women human rights defenders in Eswatini. We will now have the engagement between the women human rights defenders and the CEDAW committee members. So if we can open up for this engagement, and the members of the CEDAW committee now have the opportunity to ask specific questions and to provide some reflection on the submissions made by the women human rights defenders. So we are now opening up for this discussion. So please, can you indicate who would like to speak first and how we can conduct the engagement? Please go ahead, Nala.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very, very much. I just want first to make sure that our chair has been able to join us. I can't see her name yet in the list because she sent me a separate message on the WhatsApp. Unfortunately, she had a family issue that kept her away from the city, but she's back now and she is in a place where she should be able to connect. So can someone give me a confirmation that she is not in the waiting room, that she's in? Can we have a indication, please, Hanyo?
Thank you, Nala. Tanvir, is the room open, accessible?
Yes, Kanyo, my apologies, Nakhla. The room is open. There is no waiting room. So all the participants we see here are the only ones who have managed to get in. The meeting.
Okay. Well, I feel a little bit sad because she really is very keen about joining. I hope she can still make it. But honestly, I would like to give the floor, if possible, to my colleague, Justice Aruna Narayan, for several reasons, because she knows the context, the country, and she is from the legal system also that is closer to the context than I come from the Lebanon context, and I'm sure she will be able to share with you some of her view and experience. But I want, if I may, before giving the floor to Aruna, to thank everyone, especially the hard work that has gone into preparing this compilation of information, this report, this analysis from the different NGOs, the way they came together. And this is an exemplary way of filling the void and calling to accountability governments. I'm really impressed by that. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that whatever analysis is done on women issue, that maybe having a look at the results of the UPR, the results of other committee that comes to bear is important also for them. Because I know that although they didn't come back before CEDAW 2012, they had a second UPR. Many countries raised with them issues that are relevant to women's rights. So this is a sort of, more comprehensive way of looking at things. But I would like really now Aruna to take the floor, and let's hope that Mrs. Gebberdema can join. She will be able also to share a lot because she knows very well the context being Ghanaian. Aruna, s'il te plaît. Thank you.
Aruna, you're still muted. Please, can you unmute?
Okay. Sorry. Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me now. Good morning, good afternoon. From in my part of the world, it's already the afternoon. I'm very pleased to be with you, and I'd like to thank you all for making this possible, especially ICJ and Commissioner Nala, although she doesn't want to be called by this name. I have the highest respect for the work of the ICJ, and I'm very pleased to be associated with this project. I'd like to say that as a member of the CEDAW Committee, I'm very proud to be the only member of the committee, in fact, from Eastern and Southern African region, being from Mauritius, as I hope you know. Of course, that means that we have in common with Eswatini, or Swaziland, as it used to be known in my days when I was working at the Attorney General's office. We have in common our obligations as members of the African Union, as members of SADC, obligations under the Maputo Protocol, over and above, of course, obligations under the Cedaw Convention. I'm also very proud to have visited your beautiful country in 2011, I think, or 2012, as a resource person, together with the Human Rights Unit of the Commonwealth Secretariat, to assist in the preparation for the UPR at the time. Of course, I met mainly the government representatives at the time, but I also remember a very lively dialogue and mock session with civil society. So I don't know whether some of you who are here were present at that training session. So far as CEDAW is concerned, of course, it is a great pity that Eswatini is so far behind in submitting the CEDAW report, especially as civil society seems very engaged and prepared with your submissions, which need constantly to be updated, it would seem. Of course, as Nala would have told you in your preparation, we are here to help you. We are not here to sanction you or to judge you, even though I'm a judge myself. And you would be aware that when we have a dialogue in Geneva, this allows us to have some face-to-face meetings with NGOs, in the course of which we obtain very valuable information. Of course, now we're still grappling with virtual meetings. We're going to have a pilot session probably in February, and we would know how this kind of interaction with NGOs is going to take place, and how we're going to be able to still rely on the very valuable input we get from NGOs. Nala just said that I'm a judge. I'm a judge of the Supreme Court in Mauritius. But before I became a judge 5 years ago, I was at the Attorney General's office, as I just said, and I used to form part of the country delegation, submitting reports and presenting reports before various treaty bodies. So I do understand what it is like to be, you know, on the not the firing at the firing end, but at the part that is being fired on. So I try to bear that in mind as a member now of the CEDAW Committee, and to understand the realities that are faced both by government and by the NGOs that have to feed information into the committees. So, of course, as a judge, I'm particularly interested in access to justice aspect. I have a particular interest in Article 15 and 16, but particularly Article 15, and also, of course, Articles 1 and 2, and I've heard reference being made to the Constitution. As Nala said, I also am from a Commonwealth country, and as I said, I worked with the Commonwealth Secretariat before. I've worked at the Commonwealth Secretariat and with the Commonwealth Secretariat. I'm very familiar with the work. Yeah, I would be happy to answer any question you may have on Articles 1 to 15, 16, bearing in mind the issues you had regarding customary marriages. Louisa Shalal, my good friend and colleague, is an expert on Article 12 and right to health, and I've seen that you've mentioned a number of issues related to health. So maybe we can help her later on, because she's mainly French-speaking, mainly Francophone, but probably Nala and I can help her intervene on an area which is very much within her expertise. And of course, our chair, once she joins, is an expert on right to education. And again, I've heard several issues in relation to education being raised. The other thing, if I may still go on, or do I have still some? Do I still have time, Kajal? I can see you if you nod.
No, you have plenty of time. Please go ahead.
Okay, very good. So I would like to go on about another issue which is very close to my heart, and that is communications under the optional protocol. If I'm not mistaken, Eswatini is not a part to the optional protocol of CEDAW, and I'm very keen on ensuring that there is advocacy and efforts being made for states parties to the convention to become parties to the optional protocol. As a member and a vice chair of the working group on communications, and Nala is another member of the working group on communications, I'm sure she'll agree with what I'm saying. We're very concerned that although the number of communications is on the rise, the communications come mainly from certain countries and certain regions, and there's hardly any from the African region. I think there's a very famous case of views on Tanzania, and I think Seychelles has recently made a communication as well. But as far as I can remember, maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I can remember, these are the only two state parties from where communications have been made under the optional protocol to CEDAW. So not only would I like to encourage you as human rights defenders and members of civil society to keep the pressure on for your country to become a party to the optional protocol, but also once you do become a party to the optional protocol, that the necessary advocacy and support has got to be given to your civil society for you to be able to frame communications and assist victims of breaches of the convention. So this is something which is very close to my heart, and I would very much like to put some emphasis on that, although I know you're quite far from me for the time being. Also, as I've said, that I'm a member from the Commonwealth country, the same kind of basic constitutional framework and legislative setup. So I'm happy to assist and help in that area as well. And the last thing maybe I would mention very quickly is my collaborative work with Sisters for Change. I'm sure many, if not most of you, would be aware of the excellent work being done by Sisters for Change in the African region, but also in the Asian region, but basically with former UK colonies. And I've been very happy to be associated with that work together with my good friend and colleague Marion Bethel from the Bahamas. And Sisters for Change, as you will be aware, has done a lot of work in relation to outdated, anachronistic colonial era legislation, particularly in the area of marital rape, gender-based violence, abortion, LGBTI, etc., but also in relation to customary and religious laws. Unfortunately, I've been involved mostly with such laws and the work of Sisters for Change in the Asian region, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Pakistan, etc., etc. Not because Sisters for Change has not been active in Africa, but because I think I was not free when they were having meetings in Africa. They did invite me, I remember once, to South Africa and probably to another country, but I think I wasn't free. So most of the work I've done with Sisters for Change has been in the Asian region, but I'm very happy to pass on any requests on your part. But I'm confident that probably you will have done work already with Sisters for Change and you're familiar with the work. But if you are not, I'm very happy to pass on any requests to the very dynamic twins who are in charge of Sisters for Change. You will also be aware of the excellent publications which are also available online on marital rape, on religious laws, on discrimination in general, on LGBTI situation. So again, I commend these publications to you. If you haven't not been through them, they are very accessible online, and I'm sure that if you make a request to Sisters for Change in London, they will probably send you hard copies as well. So that would be excellent in terms of the advocacy, but also in terms of legislative reform efforts. So maybe I'll stop here, and then if there are any questions for me later on, I'll be very happy to attend to them. But for now, I think Louisa or maybe Hilary, if she's joined us, can add on to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was Justice Aruna Narayan, who was presenting to us a quick overview on the submissions that were made this morning. And Justice Narayan is from Mauritius. We are also very pleased to welcome the chair of the CEDAW Committee, who has just joined us. This is Ms. Hilary Gebberdema from Ghana. And we will allow Hilary some time to settle in and to listen to the conversation this morning. And we have a request now from Louisa. This is Louisa Chalal from Algeria. Louisa, please go ahead with your insights and presentation.
Thank you so much. Good morning, all. Sorry, I'm not so fluent in English, but I will try to do my best. First, fortunately, did not take advantage of all the very informative intervention. I thank all the speakers. Now I will be brief. we know that sexual and reproductive rights were neglected during COVID-19. This was also the case in your country. You mentioned the many problems that women encounter in accessing health care, but I have not heard about the objection of conscience, l'objecteur de conscience. Given the high number of pregnancy, I would like to know if access to abortion is now more accessible. Now, first, do you hear me? Then I would like to know also that the budget, because one of the panelists said that the budget is not so consequently with the problem that occurs in the hospital or any health services. I would like to know if we can do anything to help, to ask the authority to improve the health budget. Because if I very understand, there is a reduction in the budget since the under the COVID-19. Sorry. Sometimes I have the feeling that you don't hear me.
We hear you fine, Louisa. We hear you just fine.
Ah, okay. As I am not so fluent, I will now. I want to have some information of the access of abortion, because you have a lot of early pregnancies. I will stop there because I am not so fluent in English. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for that, Louisa. So Louisa has asked some very interesting questions, which I hope the Eswatini delegation will be able to provide some answers to. And we've had the three members of the CEDAW committee already speaking to us. So perhaps if I could ask now Hilary Gebberdema from Ghana, if she would like to make some interventions. Hilary, if I could hand over to you.
Thank you very much. May I confirm that you can hear me?
Hear you very well.
Excellent. First of all, my apologies for joining in late. I've just explained my personal circumstances to Ms. Haida, and she has so graciously accommodated me. Secondly, I want to congratulate you for this very excellent initiative, even though I have not heard the presentations. So forgive me if my contribution is repetitive, but if so, let it serve as a point of emphasis rather than an annoyance. I would like to look at the role of customary law as the concept note and the object of the engagement suggests. I would like to say that in Ghana, where I come from, we have exactly the same conflicts between customary, religious, received, and statute law. And the tensions continue and are difficult to eradicate. We have had some traction by using legal literacy volunteers who are community leaders, young people. We take them across the board, representing the society, whom we train in laws, empower them, and so on. Because they belong to the communities, they are able to spread the message, they are able to engage with the religious and customary authorities at their level, and we have seen an immense change through using the skills and the training afforded to the legal literacy volunteers. So this is what I would like to first of all stress, the continuous engagement with the customary and traditional gatekeepers. Secondly, also with the religious leaders, We have gained a lot of mileage by using, in our case and in my case, the Christian religion, looking at the Bible and looking at how some the texts there are affirmative of women's equality. In other words, I'm talking of the dynamic interpretation of Scripture. That is the second point. The third point I would like to touch on is the area of education. Education, especially in the COVID era, because the schools, if education is rightly structured, is an empowering and a transformative system. It offers safe spaces for young girls. And what we have noticed in the era of COVID, where some schools have been closed down, is that there is a fallback on religious and customary norms and mores to regulate life. So it is very important that we step in, what I call taking back education, and ensuring that those ancillary benefits education offers apart from the instruction, the safe space, the peer support, the transformational values are replicated in other creative and methods that resonate with the environment. So I will keep my contributions a bit brief now, since I have not come in at the beginning and heard almost everything. And then maybe this can be addressed, and then we can proceed from here. Again, I thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you so much for that. So I have two of the Eswatini members on standby to provide some responses to the questions and to the engagement. So first I will ask Mary to respond, and after Mary we will have Zanele also responding to the issue of custom and religion. Mary, if you can go first, please.
Thank you, Kajal. So on the issue of access to abortion, our constitution makes provision for medical abortions in instances where the pregnancy results from rape or incest, or where the pregnancy constitutes health risks to the mother and the baby. But the problem is that there is no regulatory framework to allow that that service to be accessed. It's criminal because in the absence of regulations for medical abortions, medical practitioners are afraid of carrying out those abortions because it is generally viewed that abortions in the country are illegal. And we've got instances where especially young girls have fallen pregnant as a result of incest or rape, and we have attempted to assist them to access medical abortions on the basis of the Constitution. But the facilities, the doctors are unable to provide the service because they are afraid of facing criminal charges emanating from any surgery that they may perform. And the issue of the budget. Look, the national budget for health as a whole is 15%. But in terms of the budgetary allocation of that, we have no access to that information. Government does not share the information as to regards the 15% that goes to health, what exactly it is going towards. So we cannot specifically say what portion of that percentage goes towards sexual reproductive rights. So I think in the absence of the regulations and in the absence of data, we in civil society find ourselves working in the dark with regards to assisting our clients or assisting women who need this kind of information to assist them going forward. That's it, Kaja.
Thank you, Mary. Zanele, will you go on next?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I was not hearing what you're saying because we have a little bit of a speaker laptop situation. However, I'm going to speak a little bit about the customary law and women's. So, as you might have it, I think this is a common thing in the whole of Africa, wherein customary law is not really in recognition of women's rights. women are seen as minors within the family, and we have, in Eswatini, we have a highly patriarchal society where male dominance is everywhere, especially in the home. The men take the decisions, they make the final word. However, we have heard recently that it is people that have distorted customary law, because we do know the structure of the family where they have the grandmother's house where all issues are spoken of and resolved. So it is said that the grandmother and the aunties of the families actually take the decisions in our customary setup in Eswatini. However, because of patriarchy, this has been reversed. Men obviously hold the purse and are the ones, and we know that where the person holds the purse, they make the decision. And we've seen that men in Eswatini make the decisions, and customary laws recognize women as part of the children of the men, so much that even when we talk about inheritance in a customary setup, the wife gets a child's portion of the estate of her deceased husband. So we have seen a lot of discrimination when it comes to women in a customary setting, and even when you reverse that and you take it up in such a manner where women make the decisions and the aunties or the husbands, sisters make a decision, they are the ones that the wife by seen that in Eswatini there is like a call for enacting legislation that will clearly speak out, especially customary marriages, because we know it is now, it's by individual cases that are handled where women are given entitlement over land where their husband builds a home for them. So that is the woman's land. However, we've seen a lot of cases, even in our daily dealings, we've seen a lot of cases where women are dispossessed of this land and they are basically just kicked out and not given any opportunity to defend themselves or even stand in any court of law, because all of these issues are done at community level, and most of the time the courts will tell you go back to the traditional structure to discuss these cases and make a ruling over them, and the court did not have any jurisdiction over these cases. So now we have a problem of a law that is not written in any way, it's not codified in any way. Therefore, it works differently in different regions of the country, where customary law in the whole region is prominent, it's different in the Mandingo region. Depends on who that region is, and we know that it's mostly men who are chiefs in our region, and they basically sometimes take an eye of looking out for the male figure and the men, because they are men as well. So we have a lot of issues when it comes to customary laws in the country, and also when it comes to sexual reproductive health rights, and how many children the woman is supposed to have. The whole family, that is the man's family, has a say on that. Yes, it's not written down that they have a say on it. However, if your mother-in-law keeps on asking, when are you going to get a boy child? Definitely you'll keep trying, because you live in this family and you will keep on hearing voice. So women do not have a right over their own bodies, and it basically depends on the man on how many children he would like to have. And even when it comes to family planning, for a long time in Eswatini, we had men having to consent for women to get their tubes tied up when they do not want to have children. The man has to consent to that. So it's those issues that we are dealing with.
Thank you, Zanele. And Nala, your hand was up again. If I can call on you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kajal. I really want to thank very warmly our chair, Hilary, for joining despite the personal situation and for having, from the very beginning, encouraged this type of activity. I think it's one of the rare that we had in abstracto of a planned dialogue where we are able to interact with the civil society or with the quality of the reflection. So I want to reiterate, to reassure first our chair that she will not miss anything because everything was recorded. So she will be able to listen to the part that she was able to listen to personally. And I want to seize this opportunity to congratulate ICJ, but also Tanver in particular for this animation that she shared with us on CEDAW, which does not go unnoticed. And I think it's a very interesting one to see how the convention is perceived in different contexts and how it's vulgarized, brought to the larger audience possible. I want to reiterate, of course, my thanks to you, Kajal, to Hanya, with whom I've been in touch for several activities now with ICJ, but also to Mary, Zanele, Pumele, Zenani, and Ile, who have done really a great job at presenting their priorities. And I think that also the partial answer that the part of the answer they gave already to the questions show all the difficulty, the challenges, but still the opportunities. And here I really want to emphasize all what Justice Aruna said about the potential interest of different other stakeholders in this particular country and how this can be progressively accompanied. And again, I go back and raise the issue of looking back at the UPR, at the other treaty bodies' recommendation, and seeing how to synergize all of this, especially when it comes to women's rights. My question is not going to add to the specialty of my colleague who have covered most of the issues, but it's really to concentrate on women human rights defenders. Being the reprisal rapporteur for the committee appointed more than 2 years ago, reprisal and an alternate reprisal rapporteur, and I happen to be the one currently to deal with issues of reprisal and harassment and any kind of persecution that women human rights defenders may face. I would like to know if there is a situation, whether by state or non-state actors, where women human rights defenders have suffered any form of harcèlement, harassment, or persecution, and if there is if this is documented by civil society, if there's a record on it, and how do you deal with these issues if they so happen? Thank you.
Thank you, Nala. And Justice Aruna Narayan would also have a few additional comments. If I can call on you, Aruna.
Thank you very much, Kajal. And I would like also to thank my colleagues for their input, and to all the members of the NGOs present who have reacted to what we've said. The sound on my side was very bad, so I've had a lot of breaks, and I'm sorry if maybe I've missed some of what's been said by some of our colleagues. I talked about the optional protocol to CEDAW, but I'm not sure I got any reaction on whether there's any kind of pressure on the ground from civil society for accession to the optional protocol, because I've like Hillary, I've visited Japan as a member of the committee, and when we specifically met, I don't know whether Hillary did so as well, but when I went with 2 other colleagues from the committee, we specifically met members of NGOs, some of which focus only on the issue of accession to the optional protocol, because as you know, Japan for long has resisted such accession. So I would like to know whether there's any pressure from civil society in that direction, and whether there's any awareness of what the optional protocol offers as a means of redress, of course, beyond national structures. And I listened with great interest to what was said about customary law and laws being discriminatory against women and how they can hardly be challenged. But of course, it is very important that the Constitution makes it unlawful to have discrimination on ground of sex, so that in theory it is possible to challenge discriminatory laws because they breach the Constitution. But of course, there is this tension between the Constitution and customary laws, because many of our constitutions preserve, as it were, customary laws as acceptable derogations. And so that is an issue, and I suspect this might be the case on your side as well. Also, the fact that laws are not codified and work very differently in different areas, that in itself constitutes discrimination on grounds of place of origin, as well as probably discrimination on ground of sex. So that's another ground for challenge. Yes, I listened very carefully to what was said about the problem being that mostly men who are the chiefs, men who are the ones who decide what is the law. And this is where it's very important to empower women so that they can become lawmakers as well, and MPs, ministers, or even regional chiefs that can declare what the law is and make laws. And this is where it is important to bear in mind what the convention proposes in terms of temporary special measures. That should not be an end in themselves, of course, but you can have women being appointed as opposed to elected. You can have quotas, all as temporary measures to ensure that women have their say insofar as lawmaking is concerned, so that such inadequacies and blatant discrimination can be addressed. So maybe I'll stop here for now, and I look forward to hearing what people have to say. Yes, I'm aware that insofar as accession to the CEDAW optional protocol is concerned, it has been accepted, but nothing has been done, I understand, in practice. And I think the only way in which this can be achieved is if there is pressure on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Justice Narain. If there's further questions or further issues of clarity or further submissions, we are still good for time. So if the group in Eswatini would like to make further statements, or they have questions for the CEDAW committee members, we can take another 2 or 3 questions. I see Nala has raised her hand again. Nala, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kajal. This question of the customary law, because there were several events prepared by ICJ, not only for the African region but also elsewhere. And in a recent one, I think Hanya was part of it also, we learned from the commissioner from Botswana that increasingly women are joining the club of the chiefs, the traditional chiefs, because we just heard one of the replies saying that it's usually man, etc. What about the situation? Is this a possible replication in Swaziland where women would become part of the chiefs? Because we cannot throw the baby with the water of the bath, all customary law, and we cannot just be ruled by them when they are perpetuating stereotypes. And I understand the Ghanaian experience is very interesting, and beyond, many other countries are trying to reconcile both systems. How about women chiefs in customary law in Swaziland? Thank you.
Great. Zanele, if I can ask you to respond firstly on the customary law issue.
Okay, so this is Zenani.
It's Zenani. Okay, fantastic.
First of all, I think by its design, Eswatini's customary law and practices is one which is patriarchal by nature, and it favors absolutely men. So let's just look at the status of a woman. A woman, as it has been stated before, is regarded as a minor. So by definition, a woman cannot be a leader, cannot be in an influential position to to be in charge, so to say, of men, or to take decisions which apply to men. She can take decisions which apply to her children, maybe. But when it applies to a nation or to men, then that's frowned upon. So we have, for the longest time now, all chiefs are males, and the position of becoming a chief, you are either appointed by His Majesty, or you are a son of the deceased chief, not a daughter. Even if and even if you were the firstborn daughter, no, you do not get to inherit that position. So it even goes to the other levels of decision making, because from the chieftaincy level, we then have the Induna, which now is within a certain constituency, So from Induna, we have Butopo, we have like different levels. But let's just say for the past elections, we were able to see a number of women participating in elections, however, in the parliamentary elections. However, to talk about how many of those women succeeded, only 2 women, one is a cabinet minister and the other is a member of parliament, just 2 women out of the 59. So that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of advocating and changing people's perceptions, because statistics show that women are actually the majority in Eswatini. So if women were to combine and really understand the issues of leadership and having a woman in a leadership position, they would vote for a woman, and a woman would, form even the 30% quota which is provided by the Constitution. So about the protocol, I think most organizations are aware of this protocol because most of our advocacy is influenced by such. However, as a group, as a consortium, not much has been done. I think because this protocol has delayed for years now, I think that the spirit has kind of died down, and it can be revived. We are aware of the protocol, but just to have that spirit back again, we would appreciate more information and any other way that we can use, any platform that we can use to ensure that the state adopts that protocol and submits the state's report. I'd like to end it now.
Mary, have you got anything further?
Yes, sorry. There was a question around women human rights defenders and the harassment and the persecution that they face. First of all, I think I need to begin at the aspect that says women human rights defenders, particularly as individuals, have not identified themselves as that. So we need to get to a space where women begin to realize that the work that they are doing in protecting themselves and protecting other people's rights qualifies them as women human rights defenders. Organizations as well. We have organizations that are refusing to register their organizations. For example, there's one case that's before court where an LGBT organization is being refused registration on the basis that they are basically unacceptable to society. Now, when it comes to the persecution that we speak about, most of it is the state does not really play a big role in this persecution. They use their institutions. For example, the widow that was disallowed from running for parliament, a member of parliament, because she was a widow and she was in mourning. So it was said that as a widow, she can't be a member of parliament. She can't associate or be in the other people, particularly men. So we've had those institutions. I think we have said that patriarchy has so entrenched in our country that it it's so systematic that it guides policies within the state institutions, even though it is not written down. So we have had instances where women human rights defenders face persecution within their homes as well, where you find that because of the work that they are doing, their families, their partners, the community around them begins discriminating against them, or there's some stigma that is attached to the work that she does. And then she faces pressure from the family, she faces pressure from the husband or whoever it may be to desist from the work that she's doing. And then on other issues of reporting, these are sporadic instances where we come up against these instances where somebody has said something in passing or it has been written in the newspaper, but we have not begun documenting these incidents. And I think as we are in partnership with the ICJ on this one, as the Southern African Human Rights Defenders Network, part of the work that we're doing is to get women human rights defenders to come together to begin speaking about their own persecution, apart from protecting other people, to begin protecting women human rights themselves from the violations. So offer support and legal assistance and medical assistance where it begins. But as it is, we still need to come into one room together to begin to speak to the issue of who is a woman human rights defender and what qualifies them as that. So on that issue, we've also been conducting advocacy on different instances. So coming together, these platforms as this one gives women human rights defenders the opportunity to come together and speak to issues. And going forward, I believe that some of these processes will yield better results for us. That'll be it for now, Kaja.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks very much for that. Hilary, you wanted to ask a few questions. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank colleagues also for the wonderful contributions that have come in. I just wanted to speak briefly to the issue also of women traditional leaders. I've already put something in the chat box about the customary laws. That is a process we have also gone through in Ghana, and we are continuing to go through, and we will be very pleased to collaborate because there's such a rich repertoire of experience and of the same lived experiences. I would briefly want to touch on the issue of women traditional leaders and to draw attention to the fact that under the CEDAW Convention, this is viewed as a violation of Article 7 on women in public life because our GR, not because, in addition, our General Recommendation 23 in paragraph 31 that notes that the committee notice is that women are excluded from the exercise of royal powers. It goes on to specifically say that this is a violation of Article 7. It contravenes the convention, and that the committee notes that women's participation in traditional leadership is part of Article 7. So I just wanted to draw attention to specific text, CEDAW-related text, that addresses this issue and ask that it could be used in advocacy. It's not implied, it's specifically expounded in the General Recommendation 23, paragraph 31. So we've also had the same problems, even though the Constitution says that a chief also refers to male or female. The actual admission of female chiefs into our National House of Chiefs has been checkered and problematic, and these are issues we are still working on and gaining grounds. And so I just wanted to offer a line of hope and say that we'll be pleased to collaborate on some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Louisa, did you want to speak about the 1973 proclamation? Or if the participants in Eswatini would like to respond.
Do you hear me? Do you hear?
Yes, we hear you. Yes.
Thank you so much for this meeting. I just read somewhere that some authorities use this proclamation to reduce the human rights as the meeting, the right of meeting, the right of expression. Could you please tell me if this King proclamation is now abrogated, since there is a constitution of 2005? Do you understand what I said? All right, I repeat. Yes?
Yes, no,
Thank
that's
you.
no problem. Is somebody in the Eswatini group able to answer this question that Louisa has just posed? Mary, can you do it?
Hi, Kaja.
Go
Hello,
ahead.
Kaja. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Yes.
Yes. We didn't get the question cleared. It was the connection was breaking up, and
Mary, we're not hearing you very clearly. So I'm not sure if anybody has. Do you just want to type your question into the chat box, Mary, so we can see what it is you're saying? Because the connection has become a little bit poor.
Sorry, Kajal. Mary informs me that they're having some glitches, but she is trying to connect again, and we're trying to speak on WhatsApp.
Okay. I'm aware that the participants in Eswatini have questions. Are they able to send those questions through either on the chat or on WhatsApp so that we can present those questions on their behalf and they can listen to the responses?
Yes, I've asked for that, and I will transmit it as soon as I get it. Thank you, Kajal.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, while we're waiting for the participants in Eswatini to get back online, are there any further deliberations from the members of the CEDAW Committee? Or from the other participants who are in the session? Okay, I see that Justice Narayan is saying that there's very bad sound quality. So I don't know if that's on our side or that's in Eswatini. So I think it would help us if we could relate those questions from Eswatini either orally or in the chat box. I think that would help us a great deal.
Kajal, I think the bad sound quality is definitely from Eswatini.
Okay.
I can hear you perfectly, and I see that everyone's connection is fine.
Yes.
Louis is not on the call anymore.
Okay. Here we've got the first question. The first question is from Zanele in Eswatini, and she is asking, how far can the committee, and I presume she means the CEDAW committee, pressure the state into submitting their report? So if any of the members of the CEDAW committee would like to respond to that for us. So if I can repeat the question.
I think the question is clear. Thank you,
Kajal. Perfect.
So I think the best fitted to answer is our chair, because this is constantly her preoccupation as current chair with the issue of late report, non-reporting, etc. And there have been many discussions. The chair and Mrs. Narayan, who is the vice chair and hopefully the next chair of the working group on working methods, where a lot of this discussion happens. What do we do when a country does not comply with the periodicity of the report? How do we exercise pressure? Should we be doing considering the country without a report, we have all sorts of issues. I think it's better for Mrs. Gebberdema and Mrs. Narayan to try to answer from these perspective of chair and working group on working men.
Thank you very much. I would like the chair of the working methods to go first and to specify the hard facts, the hard processes. I will come in and explain or speak a little to the softer methods. Thank you. So, Ms. Narayan, please tell us what we have on the books, how we interpret that, how we move with that, and then we will talk about the diplomatic and more nuanced forms of negotiation. Thank you.
Justice Narayan, if you're speaking, you're still muted. Justice Narayan?
Very well, very well. Maybe Justice Narayan is, maybe she's not connected, or maybe her sound quality is still bad. So let me begin then with the softer issues, as I'm wont to do as chair. We try to engage with the state and through the permanent mission, draw attention to the late reporting, convince about the importance of reporting. We also take advantage of workshops and interactions like these to reach out to the state party, either directly or through our partners. I have worked with partners to engage with the parliamentarians, with the state authorities, with civil society, to explain the importance of reporting. In fact, in the work I did with Sisters in Change in Southern Africa, there was a country that had late reporting. And we reached out at that meeting to convince the state party to report. And I spoke about the advantages of reporting. Admittedly, this was mainly to the state authorities. And within that presentation, I said that this was not an inquest. It could actually be viewed as a developmental process in which their challenges could be brought across through the process of reporting. And we could make recommendations that they could take back to Parliament to enable budgetary allocation be made, address those issues. They were amazed because they said they had always thought this was like a judgmental process, and their shortcomings would be laid bare to the whole of the world, and it may be used for not so empowering processes or purposes. So this is one way we go. There is also the possibility of assessing a state without a report. This is one that we really do not, a route that we really do not want to use for so many reasons, but then that possibility is there. And it will be an increasing possibility, as I see, when we look at the budgetary constraints within the UN and the emphasis on the fact that results must be shown. So if we have a long periods of non-reporting, this would not, the value for money arguments would not sit very well. And so moving forward to ensure the vibrance and the continuation and the effectiveness of the system, this may have to be an increasing possibility. But let me just say that going the soft way has yielded a lot of results. And I think that this is the way that we tend to go. But there is also the possibility of going in another direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Hilary. I have another question from Mary, and Mary's question is that, do the CEDAW committee members think a general or thematic discussion would work? And what strategies would they advise women human rights defenders in Eswatini to use?
Well, while I have the floor, let me seek maybe clarification on this question, and then maybe the other members could come in. Are we talking about a general or thematic discussion at the constructive dialogue? So I was not very clear with the parameters of this general or thematic discussion. But let me say that I have always favored general discussions also, because they show the interrelatedness of human rights areas. Equality is related to women's participation, is related to rights, family rights, is related to women holding traditional authority positions. Everything has an interrelatedness. And so for that reason, I have always liked to show how Articles 1 and 2 impact every article. I've always liked to show how Article 5, that we use to expound violence, runs through every single article of the convention. Every single article impacts violence against women. However, to be country specific, to address the real needs of a country, the specific needs of a country, customized needs, we do need to be specific. And what was the word she used? Thematic or general. We do need to be thematic in certain countries, because there is always an issue of prioritization. I thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Colleagues in Eswatini, do you have any further clarifications on that response from Hilary? And if you do, you can go ahead, Zanele.
We don't have any clarifications. We think that it's very clear, and thank you to Madam Hilary for that beautiful response.
Fantastic. That's great. If I can have any last interventions as we start to wrap up, we would welcome them now from either the CEDAW committee members or from the participants in Eswatini. Any final concluding statements, we will take them now. Okay, I can't see any hands, so I'm assuming that there are no last issues that anybody wants to raise.
Hello.
Hi, please go ahead.
Okay, so as the representatives of civil society and women's rights defenders in Eswatini would like to thank the ICJ and the Women's Rights Defenders Network for putting this platform together. It's been very insightful. Yes, our new normal, and with us not having internet as our priority, we've had some hiccups here and there, but thank you to Kanyo for even like liaising with us via WhatsApp and letting us know what is happening and the answers. We have gotten everything. We thank the committee for making time for us to just clarify things for us. And we hope that we will be given the opportunity to be more capacitated on the optional protocol, as well as strategies on how we can pressurize our government to actually sign for the CEDAW optional protocol. And also, just as a last word, of course, we know that we have lost our Prime Minister, and we'd like to just put it out there to say that we are sending out condolences to his family and all of the people who worked with him, because he was a very influential man and has mentored a lot of young women and women in the business sector. Thank you very much for the platform.
Thank you, Zanele. Hilary, please go ahead with your last small point.
Yes, I will. Yes, I'll be less than a minute. First of all, let me send out my condolences. I had not heard about the loss of your Prime Minister. This is one of the reasons that, I mean, the being out of the public space is one of the reasons why I've been a little tardy in joining this meeting. I've been out of where I can get news for the past 4 or 5 days. So please pardon my not hearing, and the committee's condolences to you. Secondly, even though we are here on the grounds, on the platform of CEDAW, I would like to also urge you to use the Maputo Protocol, because you know that it is a very progressive document. And in many instances, in terms of text, it even goes further than CEDAW. Sometimes the argument against CEDAW is that, oh, this is not related to us. I hear it in my own country also. This is far removed from us. But our own instrument on issues of reproductive health, rural women, and so on, even monogamy as a preferred form of marriage coming from Africa is very powerful. And this also comes from the interrelatedness, as I spoke to you, of human rights. So even though today I'm here as a CEDAW chair, I am asking that the importance of CEDAW, we can't take anything away from it. But also, because we're on the African continent, and indeed we have spoken about interventions and African issues in Africa, please also do not forget as we advocate. Again, my profound thanks and my bravo to the civil society for the wonderful work you're doing. I know the conditions on the continent. It is not easy. We don't take your work for granted. We keep encouraging you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Kanyo, if I can call on you to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you, Kajal. I think Nala's hand was raised before. Maybe I'll let you go ahead, and then I will follow after you.
Just very, very briefly to thank ICG and especially the Africa section, and to encourage you as ICG, since I can, now I'm a commissioner, encouraging you to continue to do more of these kind of exchanges that can really help on the ground and can also facilitate the work and get to results, because I think it was brilliant, the participation of the colleagues from the African group. And in particular, you are lucky, we had the chair and we had also the vice chair of the communication group. So please do continue to do this targeted work for specific context. And I think we will have support from the rest of the members of CEDAW, depending on countries and regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Nala. Thank you. I'm glad I have permission now to refer to you as Commissioner. Thank you. I think mine is to really just say thank you so much to everyone for what I believe has been an exceptionally rich conversation. And indeed, I think we have met our objective, for creating this platform or for creating the space for dialogue. In particular, I wish to briefly thank the EU in Eswatini, with whose support this engagement has been possible, as well as other activities that we continue to conduct in Eswatini. We've received exceptionally strong support from the EU in that regard. Again, to thank each member of the committee that is here today and for all the guidance and insights that were provided. It's very, very beneficial, and I've certainly learned a lot during this conversation. And to Swazi Women Human Rights Defenders, I wish to extend a very hearty thank you, Siyabonga, for all your efforts and your engagement and your preparatory work that you have done leading up to this conversation. We will continue to support and to assist in all your efforts. I wish to also thank colleagues here in Southern African Human Rights Defenders Network, as well as OSISA, I understand, is also supporting on that side. Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you, colleagues at SAHRDN, as well as colleagues here within the ICJ. Thank you very much, Tanvir, for communication support, and Kajal for your expert moderation. As always, thank you so much. I wish to just highlight that indeed, as Commissioner Nala has mentioned, there's several activities that we've been working on, including, for example, on access to justice for women in customary and religious settings. We hope to continue that work next year. We also have been doing some work on many issues that have been raised here today, including issues around the right to health and access to sexual and reproductive health. We've got a comprehensive publication that is forthcoming, just highlighting some of the key issues which women in Eswatini face around that, including issues around education, etc. So I just wish to underscore that we as the ICJ would want to and have every intention to continue supporting the advocacy work in various aspects of women's enjoyment of their rights in Eswatini. I think just, in closing, thank you very much, everybody. And I look forward next year once again to continue the work with you all. Thank you. Back to you, Kajal.
Thank you, Kanyo. And with those closing remarks, I close the session, and I thank you all for joining us today. And we will be in touch with all of you further. And thank you to the members of the CEDAW Committee for supporting this dialogue and for lending your expertise to the dialogue. Thank you very much, and goodbye.